So what if the ground beneath your feet, the air you breathe, even the stars in the sky? What if none of it is made of dead, inert stuff? What if, at the most fundamental level you can possibly imagine, the universe is, well, alive? Today, we're diving into a really mind-bending theory that comes straight out of modern physics. It's called Ruchomateria, or motion matter. And honestly, it's a concept that could completely rewrite our entire understanding of reality.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. First, we'll look at the crisis in physics that basically forced us to rethink everything. Then we'll meet the pioneers, the thinkers who were brave enough to propose a solution. After that comes the breakthrough, a simple but incredibly powerful idea that just changes the whole game. And finally, we'll explore the absolutely stunning implications of a universe that might just be aware.
Okay, so our story kicks off with a massive conflict. For literally centuries, our common sense ideas about reality, what matter is, how it works, they seem to be just fine. But then modern physics showed up and just shattered those old ideas, creating this huge gap between what we thought we knew and what science was actually discovering. And this slide really shows you the heart of the conflict. For more than 2,000 years, we had the old view, mostly thanks to Aristotle. It was simple: matter is basically passive, like a bowling ball. It just sits there until something external comes along and pushes it. Motion was an add-on. But then, boom. The new reality from physics comes along and tells us that at the subatomic level, matter is never still. It's a constant storm of activity. Motion isn't something you add to matter. It seems to be part of its very essence. And believe me, this wasn't just some headache for physicists. This shift was so profound, it was being discussed at the highest levels of theological thought. I mean, check this out. This is a quote from Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who you probably know better as Pope Benedict XVI. He's quoting this Austrian thinker, Albert Mitterer, and he just lays it out flat. Motion isn't some extra thing, it's part of matter's nature. This just goes to show you how deep the crisis was when our old philosophy just couldn't explain our new physics anymore. So, with this huge problem on the table, who is going to step up and try to solve it? Well, that brings us to our pioneers, a couple of thinkers who actually dared to build a whole new framework for reality, one that could finally bridge that gap between philosophy and modern science. Our first pioneer is that Austrian priest-scientist we just mentioned, Albert Mitterer. He called his theory hylosystemism, and put simply, he argued that matter isn't some single thing, but a system of constantly moving particles. He even came up with this amazing Polish term for them, cząstki-faląstki, which translates to particle wavelets. For Mitterer, motion wasn't just something matter did, it was a part of what matter was. It was absolutely essential, completely inseparable. Then, another priest philosopher, Tadeusz Wojciechowski, he adds another crucial piece to the puzzle. He basically said the old philosophical idea of just 2 states, potentiality, which is what something could be, and act, what it is, that just wasn't enough anymore. To describe this constant internal buzz inside matter, he proposed a 3rd state, right in the middle, the partial act. This was a whole new way to talk about that simmering, built-in activity within matter itself, something more than just potential, but not quite a full-blown action. So, Mitterer and Wojciechowski, they laid all the groundwork. They saw the problem, they pointed towards a solution. But the real breakthrough, the aha moment, came from connecting their philosophical ideas with a core concept from quantum physics in a way that was just shockingly simple. And here's where it all just clicks into place. It's a beautiful, simple piece of logic. We all know from physics about wave-particle duality, right? The idea that a single entity can be both. Well, let's just break that down. Particles, or corpuscles, they are fundamentally expressions of matter. And waves? Waves are expressions of motion. So, if the exact same thing can be both a wave and a particle, it has to follow that matter and motion aren't separate things at all. They are just 2 faces of the same fundamental coin. And this leads us right to the core concept, Ruchomateria. The name itself, it comes from the Polish words for motion, rucho, and matter, materia. It tells you the whole story. This isn't matter that just happens to move around. No. This is a single, unified thing. Motion isn't something added to matter. Motion is matter, and matter is motion. They are one and the same reality. Okay, so this is where things get really, really wild. Because if Ruchomateria is the true nature of reality, what does that actually imply about the universe we live in? The consequences are, well, they're nothing short of staggering. I want you to think about this for a second.
We've all seen those images from bubble chambers where particles curve in these perfect arcs through a magnetic field. If matter and motion are truly one and the same, if that motion is internal to the particle, then how does it know how to behave? How does a particle know which path to take with such perfect precision every single time?
Well, the theory of Ruchomateria leads to a pretty shocking conclusion. For a particle to act in such a consistent, law-abiding way, it must have some kind of primitive form of awareness. Now, we're not talking about consciousness like you and I have. It's way more fundamental. It's a basic ability to perceive its environment and a kind of want or desire to react in a very specific way. And to describe this, the theory gives us two new concepts, both with Polish roots. First, you've got wykrycie, which comes from the verb to detect. This is the particle's ability for perception, its way of sensing what's around it. And second, there's żądza, which comes from the word to desire. This is its capacity for volition, that internal drive to react based on what it's perceiving. So right there, at the most basic level of reality, you have the building blocks of awareness, perception and desire.
And just in case you think this is all getting a little too philosophical, listen to how a modern physicist, Dr. Krzysztof Kutak, talks about particle interactions. He says a photon can sense the internal structure of a proton. He's using the language of perception to describe what they actually see in experiments. It's an incredible moment where this deep metaphysics and cutting-edge science start saying the same thing.
So what holds all of this together? Right? What makes sure an electron always acts like an electron and not suddenly like a proton? The theory proposes one final concept, the Ruchomaterial nayaj, or the motion matter self. Now, this isn't a self like we have. It's an inherent principle of identity. It's the thing that makes a particle a consistent, individual entity that always follows the laws of physics and interacts predictably. It is the source of its fundamental selfhood.
And that leaves us with one final, absolutely mind-bending question. If the fundamental building blocks of our reality, the tiny particles that make up you, me, and everything we can see and touch, if they possess a primitive form of perception, desire, and even a self, then what does that say about what we truly are?